Hello, my loves. Welcome back to Oni-chan. Do you think love can begin with violence and bloodshed? This story takes place on a street in the heart of Tokyo. A beautiful girl was being harassed by a group of thugs. They forced her into a narrow alley. At that moment, a mysterious man appeared. He fiercely attacked the guys who had just harassed her. Then, he revealed the tattoos and blood all over his body. The girl was terrified by what she saw. But little did she know, this was just the beginning. Between them, a mysterious relationship would soon begin. It's not simply a sweet and romantic love story. It's a dangerous and life-threatening journey. So stay tuned with Oni-chan. The young man you're seeing is named Kirishima. Kirishima is excitedly looking at a photo of his fiancée. Her name is Yoshino. Yoshino is the daughter of a Yakuza family in the Kasai region. Her grandfather is Renji. He is the leader of the Sume group, the largest Yakuza group in the Kasai region. Right now, Yoshino is upset because Renji chose a husband for her without asking. Even Yoshino doesn't know who he is. Renji wants Yoshino to go to Tokyo and meet this man. In the end, Yoshino has no choice but to go. When she arrived, she happily greeted everyone. Yoshino was surprised to see that the person behind her was Kirishima. At that moment, Kirishima introduced himself. He had even prepared a place for Yoshino to stay, now that she had officially moved to Tokyo. However, that made Yoshino feel confused, because she hadn't made up her mind yet. Still, Kirishima was very happy that Yoshino came to see him. Unexpectedly, Yoshino transferred to a school in Tokyo. Kirishima was the one who helped her get familiar with the school. The two of them chatted happily together. In class, Yoshino was surprised when someone suddenly talked to her. It turned out they had seen Kirishima walking with her that morning. So everyone was curious about their relationship. Yoshino hesitated, unsure how to answer. That made them annoyed and walk away. After what had just happened, Yoshino felt something wasn't right. Just then, Kirishima was waiting for her in the hallway. The two of them walked home together. Yoshino realized that Kirishima was very popular at school, even though people found out Kirishima was the grandson of a Yakuza group. They didn't find him scary at all. Not even Kirishima seemed to care. As night fell, Yoshino was frustrated because she couldn't sleep. Suddenly, she remembered something Kirishima had said at school. Kirishima seemed like a completely different person compared to what Yoshino had imagined. She got up to find something to drink. By chance, Yoshino saw Kirishima just getting home, but there was blood all over him. It made Yoshino feel scared. The next day, when Yoshino arrived at school, she overheard people saying bad things about her. Yoshino was upset, but she couldn't do anything about it. When night came, Yoshino met up with Kirishima to buy some daily necessities. However, Yoshino had to stop by a nearby store to withdraw some money. On the way, she encountered a group of shady men. They deliberately led her into a narrow alley. Just in time, Kirishima suddenly appeared. He swiftly took down the leader of the group. Yoshino froze in place, shocked by Kirishima's violent assault. In the end, he successfully rescued Yoshino. However, Yoshino was deeply frightened because of the strange expression on Kirishima's face and the strange things he said. At that moment, Kirishima revealed something. He said he was already bored of Yoshino because she was more ordinary than he had imagined. From now on, Kirishima thought Yoshino was just a worthless girl to him. Kirishima kept saying cruel things to Yoshino. At school, Yoshino was deep in thought. She had never imagined that someone like Kirishima could exist in this world. Suddenly, Yoshino realized someone was bullying her. She truly wanted to go back home. At that moment, Renji called to check on her. Renji could tell that she was feeling homesick. But Renji told Yoshino, even when things don't go well, she must not return home for a whole year. Yoshino had to use this time to make Kirishima fall madly in love with her. After that, she could come home, because according to Renji, that was the best way to get revenge on a man. At that moment, Yoshino became determined to achieve her goal. The next day at school, Yoshino actively approached Kirishima. She handed Kirishima a bag full of money. To get such a large amount, Yoshino had sold one of her kidneys, just to make Kirishima face the consequences of his arrogance. Yoshino declared she wouldn't return to Osaka. Instead, she would continue facing these harsh challenges. Unexpectedly, Kirishima felt thrilled. He wanted to get married as soon as possible. That decision completely shocked Yoshino. A little later, Yoshino found a quiet place to eat lunch. Suddenly, Kirishima appeared behind her. It made Yoshino furious. Kirishima said he had something important to tell her. That night, the two of them had to stay at home, because Kirishima's father had something to discuss with them. When night came, Yoshino's mind was filled with too many thoughts. Suddenly, Kirishima's father had something urgent to attend to, so he asked someone else to pass on the message. Currently, the daughter of another Yakuza group named Akazaha had gone missing. However, no one knew the exact reason yet. That's why everyone was worried about Yoshino. She might be in danger at this very moment. To prevent any serious consequences, Yoshino had to stay by Kirishima's side 24 hours a day, or she would have to ask Soda for help. At that moment, Yoshino was extremely afraid, but Kirishima didn't care at all. He invited Yoshino to have dinner together. When they arrived at the meeting spot, Kirishima couldn't stop admiring Yoshino's cuteness. It made her feel shy. The two of them chatted together. Then Kirishima revealed something. He actually wasn't a blood relative of his current family, because Kirishima's grandfather had chosen not to have children. Technically, it was his uncle. When Kirishima turned 12, he started living with his current grandfather. At that moment, Kirishima stepped outside after receiving a call. Yoshino was surprised by Kirishima's background. At school, Kirishima sat at Yoshino's desk, even though it wasn't his class. That annoyed and angered Yoshino, especially when Kirishima got physically close to her. However, Kirishima didn't seem to care. He kept saying things that confused Yoshino. That night, Yoshino thanked Soda for his help, because she had forgotten that the power frequencies in Osaka and Tokyo are different. So Yoshino brought the wrong electrical device and ended up breaking it. Yoshino was touched, because it was the first time she met someone kind in Tokyo. Soda was excited, thinking Yoshino and Kirishima seemed to match well. However, Yoshino immediately rejected that idea, since most of the time she didn't understand what Kirishima was saying. Suddenly, Soda revealed he had never actually had a proper conversation with Kirishima, because the first time Soda met him, Kirishima was still in middle school, but he didn't look like a middle schooler at all, and talking with Kirishima had never been easy. Suddenly, while on the car, Yoshino spotted Akaza. Because of Akaza's tattoo, Yoshino immediately called Kirishima to inform him. Eventually, the two of them met up. Yoshino felt very uncomfortable entering the club, so she stayed close to Kirishima. At that moment, Kirishima successfully approached Akaza. Akaza was worried, thinking Kirishima was going to kill her. Suddenly, three strangers accidentally attacked Yoshino. It turned out they were all targeting Kirishima, but none of them expected that Kirishima alone could take them down with his terrifying strength. However, Yoshino didn't back down in the chaos. She managed to defeat one of them, but Kirishima was worried, because Yoshino was bleeding. Still, it was nothing compared to her. Faced with Kirishima's brutality, Yoshino quickly stopped him. At school, the relationship between Yoshino and Kirishima had progressed. On their way home, Kirishima accidentally ran into a mysterious stranger. While Yoshino was sleeping, someone was in her room. Yoshino thought it was Renji, but then she remembered she was in Tokyo. At that moment, she thought it was just a dream. But shortly after, Yoshino believed it was Kirishima, because she thought Kirishima had broken all the locks. So Yoshino was angry at his silly antics. At that time, Yoshino came up with a plan. When night fell, Kirishima entered Yoshino's room. This time, she was still awake. Yoshino wanted to see Kirishima's next move. Suddenly, Kirishima touched her hair. At that moment, Yoshino didn't hesitate to attack Kirishima with a knife. But she was startled by Kirishima's reflexes. Yoshino immediately became curious how Kirishima could get in here. It turned out he used aluminum foil to make a fake key, which made Yoshino angry. This time, she decided to teach Kirishima a lesson. However, Yoshino didn't know the reason behind Kirishima's actions. It turned out Kirishima realized, every time they met, Yoshino seemed angry. So Kirishima wanted to see her face while she was sleeping. Suddenly, Yoshino grew curious about the wound on Kirishima's face. It turned out he was beaten for going out past the curfew. At that moment, Yoshino set a condition. To keep herself from getting angry, Kirishima had to obey the curfew. But Yoshino knew it was impossible. She even found out Kirishima was dating many people. Because Yoshino was very good at noticing such things. Kirishima was surprised that Yoshino had realized that. But she wasn't angry at all. It turned out Yoshino didn't like Kirishima. Because if someone Yoshino liked suddenly played around with another girl, Yoshino would kill him immediately. Suddenly Kirishima thought, Yoshino really hated him. Because Kirishima didn't know when. He had always enjoyed being next to Yoshino. Even Kirishima's attendance at school was more interesting. It turned out Yoshino didn't hate Kirishima that much. Yoshino acted that way because she didn't know what Kirishima would do next. Nevertheless, Yoshino also noticed many good points about him. The next day, while Yoshino was watering plants, Kirishima sent her a package from Osaka. It turned out to be a photo album with Yoshino's father. Yoshino's father was a man who hated fighting, to the point that he always argued with Renji. After that, Yoshino's father moved out to live on his own, and he got married after graduating high school. But Yoshino had no impression of her father, because he died in an accident before Yoshino was born. At that moment, Kirishima informed her, Renji would come to Tokyo the day after tomorrow. It was a dinner held 4 times a year, and the leaders of the gangs would attend. However, Yoshino knew nothing about this. When Yoshino mentioned her father, suddenly Kirishima remembered something. He had an old photo, and the gang leader Renji was also in it. Yoshino was surprised because the current grandfather of Kirishima was also in the photo. Because he looked exactly like Kirishima. This photo made the two of them look very close. However, they really were close friends. The next day, Yoshino went to meet her bodyguard named Takeda. At that time, Takeda asked about her and Kirishima's current situation. Yoshino hesitated before answering. Takeda then told Yoshino they should return to Osaka during summer vacation so Takeda could check on her. The reason was because Takeda was worried about Yoshino, since Takeda had been taking care of Yoshino since she was little. Even more than Renji. At that moment, Shoma appeared. He was an old friend of Yoshino. Shoma wanted to meet Yoshino, because he didn't know how she was living currently. Afterwards, the two of them talked about life. After finishing their meal, Yoshino went to Shuma's room to rest. Although it was late, Yoshino did not want to go home, because right now she didn't want to show her weaknesses in front of Kirishima. Since Yoshino's ultimate goal was to defeat Kirishima. However, he was the only person Yoshino could rely on in Tokyo. At that moment, Shoma went outside to smoke. Suddenly, he ran into Kirishima. The two of them attacked each other with words. At that moment, Shoma wanted to know the reason Yoshino came to Tokyo. However, Kirishima did not reveal it. But Kirishima knew. Renji would not expect the marriage between him and Yoshino, because of another purpose. Nevertheless, Kirishima still accepted Renji's proposal. At that moment, Yoshino discovered their meeting. Just as Kirishima wanted to take Yoshino home, Shoma immediately stopped them. He wanted to take Yoshino back to Osaka, because Shoma sensed that Kirishima was not normal. At that time, the two fought over Yoshino. The next morning, Yoshino went to the station to see Shoma off. Shoma was curious about Kirishima, but Kirishima did not go with Yoshino, because Yoshino said nothing when leaving. Yoshino found out. Shoma extremely hated Kirishima, but it seemed Kirishima had many points to exploit, so Yoshino couldn't return yet. It was time for Shoma to leave. Before leaving, Shoma hugged Yoshino. Just then, Kirishima was also there watching them. After a while, Yoshino and Kirishima on the way to school. Yoshino is confused when Kirishima moves closer to her. In the classroom, Yoshino has a headache thinking about Kirishima's cold feelings. However, Yoshino notices Kirishima is looking at her. At home, while Yoshino is packing, she receives a package from Kirishima. At this moment, Kirishima misunderstands. He thinks Yoshino is packing up to prepare to return to Osaka, causing Yoshino to worry and wonder. Is Kirishima trying to kill her or something? However, Kirishima immediately denies it. He really has no problem with Yoshino. At this moment, Yoshino cleverly thinks it's because of Shoma, and it turns out to be true. Kirishima is jealous seeing Yoshino close to Shoma. Kirishima feels like he is going crazy, causing Yoshino to be shocked. She admits her original intention. After 1 year, Yoshino will leave Kirishima to return to Osaka. But if she falls in love with Kirishima, then Yoshino will continue to stay in Tokyo. However, she thinks that is impossible. At this moment, Kirishima wants to know what he needs to do. Suddenly, he gets scolded by Yoshino. But because of that, Kirishima can't stop loving Yoshino more and more, because of her special personality. At this moment, Yoshino gives up, because talking to Kirishima also gives her a headache. The next morning, Yoshino has fallen ill as she always does in summer. So she messages Kirishima to ask for a day off from school, and tells him not to come check on her but to go to school instead. However, Kirishima doesn't listen to what Yoshino said. He immediately goes to Yoshino's place. Today Kirishima will not go to school and will stay to take care of her. However, Yoshino disagrees, and quickly chases Kirishima away. At school, Kirishima is very worried about Yoshino. When he gets home, Yoshino's illness gets worse, so Kirishima takes her to the hospital. On the way, Kirishima is very concerned about Yoshino. After many days, Kirishima calls Renji to inform him about Yoshino's health condition. She is currently getting better, making Renji very grateful. At this moment, he asks about the situation between them, but it seems Kirishima is very confident, making Renji satisfied with him. When Yoshino wakes up, she is surprised to find Kirishima beside her. It turns out Kirishima has been there since last night, because he was worried about Yoshino's health, so she appreciates Kirishima's actions. At this moment, Kirishima prepares to leave the room. Before he goes, Yoshino takes the initiative to cook udon noodles to eat together, because Yoshino knows when Kirishima took care of her while she was sick. Kirishima skipped many meals. After returning to school, Yoshino faces many troubles with the final exam, but Kirishima is not worried. He even takes the initiative to tutor Yoshino, because Kirishima has an effective study plan. However, Yoshino's ability is too weak, making her lack confidence in herself. Suddenly Yoshino remembers, on the last day of the exam, she will go to Yokohama, because Yoshino's cousin will move from Yodo to Yokohama. A few days later, Kirishima was present with Yoshino, because he was worried it would be dangerous for two girls to be alone. Moreover, Kirishima knows the roads in this area very well. After a while, Kirishima became curious about Yoshino's cousin, but actually, he already knew quite a lot about Yoshino's complicated family. At this moment, Yoshino's cousin appeared. Her name is Tsubaki. They were both happy to see each other after a long time. Tsubaki heard rumors that Yoshino's boyfriend is really handsome. At this moment, she was able to confirm it. By the way, Tsubaki asked about Yoshino's final exam. However, Yoshino was worried, because she feared there might be problems with the answers. But Kirishima tried to comfort Yoshino. On the way, Tsubaki observed their feelings for each other. Her eyes became strange at this moment. After a while, Yoshino was confused, because Tsubaki always thought Renji was a perfect person. But Tsubaki explained, although Renji still has many flaws, it is precisely those flaws of his that make Renji uniquely charming. Renji is truly an idol to Tsubaki. While the three of them were sitting and drinking, Tsubaki was curious about the feelings between Kirishima and Yoshino, making Yoshino embarrassed. However, Kirishima answered very naturally. At this moment, Yoshino felt very tired being around the two of them, making her crave sweets like crazy. Suddenly Kirishima found out, so he decided to order what he had just seen. At this moment, Yoshino took the initiative to go wash her hands, returning to Kirishima and Tsubaki. When Yoshino was not there, Tsubaki could clearly notice that Kirishima's way of treating her and Yoshino was completely different. In fact, Tsubaki had known from the beginning that Kirishima didn't like talking to her at all. But what surprised Tsubaki was that Kirishima could guess what Yoshino wanted. Not only that, every time Yoshino expressed an opinion, Kirishima focused his full attention, with the purpose of making Yoshino like him. But so far, the results were not what Kirishima hoped for. When they were going home, suddenly a teacher from school called Yoshino, informing her that there was a problem with the test. At this moment, Yoshino needs to rush back to school to deal with it. Kirishima will stay to take Tsubaki back to the hotel. Suddenly Kirishima suggests meeting Tsubaki at another place. They sat on the Ferris wheel. Here Kirishima reveals that he knows the secret information about Tsubaki's family. At this moment, Kirishima straightforwardly asks Tsubaki where Yoshino's kidney is currently. Because it's rare to sell a kidney without any connection, Kirishima is sure that Tsubaki is the only person whom Yoshino can rely on in this matter. But Kirishima searched everywhere. Then he realized that from the beginning Yoshino's kidney has not been removed. Because when Kirishima had the chance to observe Yoshino sleeping, she has a small scar above her left waist, which is not the exact size of a major surgery. Suddenly Tsubaki reveals that she secretly took 1.5 million liters of Yoshino's blood and gave her 4 million yen. At this moment Kirishima wants to buy back that blood, making Tsubaki laugh. She refused Kirishima's offer. This time he continues to ask more. When taking such a large amount of Yoshino's blood, she could be in danger. It turned out that Tsubaki had tried to persuade, but Yoshino kept begging, because she didn't want Kirishima to make a joke out of her. At this moment, Tsubaki threatened, if Kirishima becomes a completely useless bastard, then Tsubaki will do everything to make sure Kirishima can never find Yoshino for the rest of his life. The next day, Yoshino was happy because the test was handled in time. Just as Kirishima tried to tease her, their strange moments were seen by everyone. In the evening, when Tsubaki called Yoshino, she accidentally revealed that when Kirishima was 12 years old, he went to Osaka to meet Yoshino. But unfortunately, Kirishima didn't get to meet her. That made Yoshino curious. At school, Yoshino kept thinking about what happened yesterday. At this moment, she accidentally met Kirishima. He was surrounded by many girls. However, Kirishima took the initiative to go home with Yoshino. On the way home, Yoshino thought the girls were definitely flirting with Kirishima, but he immediately denied it. Since the very first year of school, many people tried to approach Kirishima, but he rejected them all, and they stopped trying because it was useless. Anyway, at this time, Yoshino was everything to Kirishima, but this made Yoshino angry, because she thought she was just a replacement. In another development, Shioda is a very outstanding person. She is noticed by everyone, but because of that, all the girls around hate Shioda, although on the surface they always smile and talk to each other. At this moment, Kirishima appeared to get to know everyone. He pretended not to know Shioda, but actually, Shioda was Kirishima's old classmate. They even dated many years ago. When they met again, Kirishima was surprised by how much Shioda had changed, and he sent Shioda his contact information before leaving. At home, Yoshino was waiting for Kirishima. Later she called Kirishima about their previous plan to go to Osaka. They both agreed on the time. Several days later, they arrived at the station. However, Yoshino seriously reminded Kirishima, even if someone causes trouble, he has to try to hold back, to avoid any problems. At this moment, Kirishima was happy, because he thought Yoshino was caring about him. Finally, Yoshino also felt like she was coming home. By chance, she saw Shoma at a restaurant. Yoshino immediately got off the car to meet him. It turned out Shoma had been waiting here for a long time, because he guessed Yoshino would come to have lunch as soon as she got back. At this moment, Kirishima appeared from behind. The two looked at each other with frightening eyes. Yoshino quickly became scared. The restaurant owner came outside. She was surprised by Yoshino's boyfriend's handsome appearance. Kirishima politely greeted everyone around. After a while, the three went together to Yoshino's house. Then, Kirishima went into Yoshino's room to rest. He observed everything around. Yoshino thought there was something strange in her room, but Kirishima found her room very beautiful. Kirishima accidentally saw a craft item made by Yoshino, so Yoshino gave it to him. In the evening, everyone invited each other to eat out. However, the atmosphere between Kirishima and Shoma, making Yoshino very uneasy. At this moment, Kirishima would return to the hotel. It turned out Kirishima thought staying in Yoshino's room was not a good idea, which surprised Yoshino. Unexpectedly, that night Kirishima stayed with Shioda. Between them, there was a vague relationship. The next day, Yoshino went to visit a university in Osaka, but she was confused, because Kirishima also followed, although he didn't intend to take the exam there. Unexpectedly, Shioda was also volunteering at this school, so the two accidentally met. Yoshino got lost, so she asked Shioda to find the student affairs office. At this time, They talked together. Yoshino accidentally found out Shioda knew Kirishima. Even more surprisingly, they had known each other since elementary school. Because of that, Yoshino was curious about Kirishima's parents. But Shioda did not know much about their identities. At this time, Shioda had to leave, so she gave her contact information to Yoshino. After arriving home, Yoshino asked Shoma about Shioda. However, Shoma said he did not know her. As for Shioda, she was thinking about Yoshino. At this moment, Ozu appeared. He was Shioda's ex-boyfriend. Ozu realized he was being avoided by her. However, Shioda was annoyed, because Ozu kept bothering her, although they were no longer dating. Suddenly, Ozu found out about the secret relationship between Shioda and Kirishima, which surprised her. Shioda immediately denied it. Unexpectedly, Ozu already had proof. At this moment, Shioda wanted to know Ozu's real purpose. Ozu was excited by Shioda's intelligence. The next day, Ozu wanted Shioda to bring Kirishima to a specific place. But Kirishima must not realize what was going on. Moreover, Yoshino had to be there as well. The next day, Kirishima and Yoshino went together to the aquarium. Kirishima was happy as if they were dating. Yoshino shared. She often came here when she was little. Yoshino even thought that all aquariums were called marine creature exhibitions, which made Kirishima laugh. But Yoshino explained that was normal when she was a child. This time she was curious about Kirishima's childhood. But he did not reveal it, because Kirishima thought there was nothing interesting to tell Yoshino. This outing made them look closer. Suddenly Kirishima took the initiative to hold Yoshino's hand. He wanted to say something to Yoshino. But Kirishima suddenly received a phone call. Due to an unexpected matter, they returned home. It turned out Kirishima had gone to Shioda's place. Here Shioda revealed she had met Yoshino at a university yesterday. Unexpectedly, Kirishima found out about this. He even knew Shioda had exchanged contact information with Yoshino, because it was part of Kirishima's plan. Unexpectedly, he also knew things related to Ozu, which surprised Shioda. Kirishima added, Ozu had planned from the beginning to use Shioda to do bad things for Ozu. At this time Shioda informed Yoshino had arrived at the place Shioda sent her to. Suddenly there was a call from Yoshino. She knew Kirishima and Shioda were together. Meanwhile, Yoshino was observing Ozu from above. At this moment, Kirishima was curious about what she was doing there. However, Yoshino did not answer. But she knew, if Kirishima went to Ozu's meeting point, perhaps that place was full of thugs ready to kill him, because it was a plan arranged by Ozu. Meanwhile, Kirishima and Shioda were preparing to go there. Kirishima called Shoma, told him about Yoshino's current location, because Kirishima had something to deal with. So Shoma should quickly come pick up Yoshino, as she was currently in trouble. As for Yoshino, she was pretending to be a senior student, to get close to Ozu. But he was suspicious, thinking the girl in front of Ozu was sent by Kirishima. However, Ozu was also somewhat interested in Yoshino. As for Shoma, when he arrived at the location Kirishima sent, the person in the room was Shioda. She immediately handed the phone to Shoma, because it could help find Kirishima's location. At this moment, Shoma pulled Shioda along to that place. Suddenly, 3 strangers stood in front of the door, but Shoma quickly handled them. As for Yoshino, she deliberately got Ozu drunk, causing him to panic. At this moment, Ozu tried to find a way out and escape, so Yoshino was looking for him. Just then, she received a call from Kirishima. At this moment, Yoshino was angry, because Kirishima refused to do what she said. But Kirishima was afraid bad people would approach Yoshino. If she got hurt, everything would become meaningless. Kirishima begged Yoshino to come home, because right now Kirishima was very worried about her. Then Kirishima continued the conversation from the aquarium. He said his birthday matches Yoshino's, so when Kirishima turns 18, they could get married. But after Yoshino heard that, she didn't understand what Kirishima was saying, and admired his craziness. At this moment, Kirishima continued. He loved Yoshino more than anyone else in the world. And now, Kirishima was ready to bet his life on it. Suddenly Kirishima set a condition. If he can solve all the problems before tomorrow, then Kirishima will win. But if he loses, he will never mention marriage again. After a while, Kirishima repeated, Yoshino can come if she wants. but she must be careful not to be exposed. At this time, the villains were looking for Kirishima. Suddenly, he attacked them from behind. Kirishima slowly questioned them about related matters. As for Yoshino, she was eavesdropping on the conversation. Unfortunately, she was discovered by them. As for Kirishima, Kirishima had called all the related people to a location, so he could easily deal with them. Yoshino was very worried because she had been discovered. Suddenly they thought it was Kirishima, which surprised Yoshino. At this moment, she bravely stepped out. However, they threatened to kill Yoshino in front of Kirishima, but she calmly answered. They had completely fallen into Kirishima's plan. Yoshino quickly insulted them. At this moment, that person got angry, so he used a knife to attack Yoshino. Just then, the entire place lost power. Yoshino took the opportunity to counterattack, but she was no match for him, so Yoshino immediately ran away. Kirishima also took advantage of the blackout. He successfully dealt with each one. Unexpectedly, Azami was also present. Meanwhile, Yoshino was hiding in the crowd. She was trying to find a way to save herself. At this moment, Kirishima thought Azami was the one behind everything, since Kirishima arrived in Osaka. But the main reason was Yoshino. The two had fought over a girl. However, the situation was discovered by everyone. To avoid major trouble, Azami decided to leave, but he regretted not being able to meet Yoshino. As for Yoshino, after running for a while, finally, Yoshino managed to surprise attack him. After a while, Yoshino and Kirishima met again, and Ozu was also there. They were discussing recent events. It seemed that Kirishima was the reason, causing Ozu to threaten even Yoshino. But Ozu thought they were misunderstanding something. He never threatened anyone. Ozu only knew that Kirishima and Shioda once had a relationship, and since they seemed close again, Ozu felt worried. He hoped to be friends with Shioda like before. At this moment, Kirishima was surprised by Ozu's way of handling the issue. He left no evidence behind. Kirishima tried to find a way to bring Ozu down, but he was unsuccessful. Although Ozu was very careful, his family was not the same. Kirishima knew clearly the background of Ozu's parents. He knew the evil deeds of their family. So Kirishima succeeded in threatening Ozu, making Ozu furious. But those were consequences he had to accept. At this moment, Kirishima made a condition to Ozu. If Ozu no longer contacted Shioda from now on, Kirishima would take the initiative to end everything. So this time Ozu gave up. Just then, Shioda and Shoma appeared together. Shioda had recorded the entire conversation as evidence. On the way home, it had been a long time since Yoshino saw Shoma get beaten badly. It was funny that Yoshino used a pickup truck to chase after someone. Suddenly she apologized, because Kirishima had dragged Shoma into this mess. However, he immediately teased Yoshino. They thought about the events that just happened. At first, Yoshino only thought Ozu used money to hire those thugs to take revenge on Kirishima. But now, Yoshino thinks someone threatened Ozu, forcing him to pay even though he didn't want to. However, Yoshino really didn't know what was behind this plan. On Kirishima's side, Shioda thanked him for his recent actions. At this moment, Kirishima had something to ask. He was curious about their meeting at the university, whether Yoshino mentioned Kirishima or not. But Shioda didn't understand what Kirishima meant. It turned out Yoshino only said Kirishima was an acquaintance, and she completely showed no interest in Kirishima. Shioda realized her chances were quite low. She thought Yoshino was stupid and had an arrogant attitude. And Shioda knew a few girls who used to know Kirishima, so she was surprised that Kirishima's taste had changed. But Kirishima at the present time, Yoshino meant everything to him, which made Shioda angry. At this moment, she went home alone. Suddenly Yoshino appeared, waiting for a ride home. Unexpectedly, Kirishima sincerely apologized to her for everything. But Yoshino didn't seem angry, because she knew Kirishima had changed the plan a lot to fit Yoshino's way of working, after so many things had happened between them. This time, Yoshino straightforwardly asked Kirishima whether he really liked her or not. But after many observations, it seemed Kirishima truly cared about her. However, Yoshino still wanted to know the truth. Unexpectedly, Kirishima himself had indescribable feelings. But he was happy, because after many days together, finally Yoshino also started to notice Kirishima. Kirishima wanted to know how he could become her boyfriend. Surprisingly, Kirishima only needed to beat Yoshino by playing rock paper scissors. Then she would agree to date him, because they couldn't compete physically. In the end, Kirishima won. The next day, Yoshino's family came to visit her father's grave. Not long now until Yoshino would be older than her father, which made her emotional. After a while, Yoshino and Tsubaki walked home together. Yoshino was lucky because Renji didn't notice the wounds on her face. But Tsubaki warned her, if Yoshino was careless, Renji would find out immediately. At that moment, excited to see Shoma angry. Whenever they met, Shoma and Tsubaki would enthusiastically provoke each other. Even Yoshino got used to it. At this time, when Kirishima was caring for Yoshino, Shoma immediately dragged her away. In the evening, during a party at home, Kirishima enthusiastically greeted everyone. Renji was very surprised, because Kirishima looked exactly like Gaku. Renji even thought that his old friend was trying to seduce his granddaughter. At this moment, Renji asked Kirishima whether he really loved Yoshino or not. This time, Kirishima quickly affirmed that he loved Yoshino more than anyone else in the world, which surprised everyone around. By chance, Yoshino found out that Kirishima didn't know how to drink beer, because Renji knew that Kirishima's grandfather never touched it. Gaku's favorite thing was sweets. Renji remembered a time when Gaku once owned a car. Unfortunately, Renji drove it off a cliff, causing Gaku to give him a beating. At this time, Renji had something to do. He arranged to meet Shoma in the basement. Next was Kirishima. It turned out Renji was investigating the scar on Kirishima's eye. Coincidentally, Kirishima's answer was the same as Shuma's. This time, Renji punched Kirishima. He warned Kirishima to tell the full truth. Renji knew that Yoshino was also involved because of Kirishima, so he taught Kirishima a lesson. On Tsubaki's side, she didn't think Yoshino would date Kirishima so quickly. However, Tsubaki still advised Yoshino to be careful, because someone like Kirishima was extremely dangerous to be around. People would never know what he was thinking, or what Kirishima would do next. Outside, Kirishima and Shoma met again, but the atmosphere between them remained very tense. Kirishima announced that he would officially take over Shuma's former job. Kirishima repeatedly used words to insult Shoma. It was time for the atmosphere between them to become dangerous. The two were now fighting fiercely. At home, Yoshino used location tracking to find out that Kirishima was at the park. She immediately sensed something was wrong, so she quickly went to stop them. At this moment, Yoshino was very angry, so she tried to find a way to reconcile them. But Yoshino thought things were more difficult than she imagined. She saw that Kirishima often made things difficult for Shoma, because he thought Kirishima was jealous. But Yoshino and Shoma had known each other for a long time. They had even lived together. So when Yoshino agreed to date Kirishima, she thought their atmosphere would ease the tension. However, after Yoshino saw Kirishima continued to cause trouble, Yoshino thought Kirishima was her boyfriend because of Shoma. At this time, Yoshino wanted to talk privately with Shoma, so she wanted Kirishima and Tsubaki to go home first. Yoshino didn't understand why Shoma was angry with her, but Shoma was already tired of these silly things. He thought Yoshino's approach was very stupid, so she gave Kirishima a chance to be arrogant. At this moment, Yoshino comforted Shoma, because life wasn't so bad at the moment. After several days, finally, Yoshino returned to Tokyo. However, Kirishima was confused when Yoshino continued to avoid him. Although Kirishima tried many ways to talk, Yoshino still refused to respond. At this time, Kirishima tried to find out the reason, but failed. He called Tsubaki for help, but there was still no result. The next day, Kirishima continued to bring Yoshino her favorite foods. But after 2 days, Yoshino still ignored Kirishima. On another day, Kirishima persistently called Yoshino until it started to rain, and he helplessly sat under the rain. At that moment, Yoshino appeared. She was curious whether Kirishima knew the reason why she had been angry with him for so many days. But from now on, Yoshino warned that Kirishima must not contact Shoma without her permission, and especially must not cause trouble with Shoma. After hearing this, Kirishima sincerely apologized to Yoshino. He hoped Yoshino wouldn't behave like that again. At this moment, she cared about Kirishima, because it was raining outside. and Kirishima had been standing there since the afternoon. Suddenly, Kirishima lifted Yoshino up. He looked at Yoshino like a sun goddess. Kirishima met her again after a long time, which made him suddenly remember how beautiful Yoshino was. Their atmosphere had now become good. Kirishima confided. The time he spent with Yoshino was the only thing he truly liked. Kirishima could find Yoshino anywhere, because she seemed to stand out more than others. At this moment, they held each other's hands to feel the warmth. It seemed Yoshino felt Kirishima's sincere feelings for her. Their relationship had now developed to a new level. That's all for today's video. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to support Oni-chan in the upcoming videos. Thank you for watching. Love you all.